Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to have you all. Welcome to Atlanta Federation of Musicians Night School at the Hall. This monthly program brings together musicians and industry professionals to discuss topics impacting working musicians, no matter their union affiliation. Night School at the Hall was created by our union's organizing task force with the mission of better serving and understanding our community. We're here to advocate for the dignity, respect, and working conditions of all musicians. We hope today's session helps us all learn and grow with this understanding. We're thrilled to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Our guest speaker today is a fellow freelance musician, multi-instrumentalist, labor advocate, and local member, Dallas McCorkendale. Dallas will be presenting a brief overview of our local Atlanta Federation of Musicians, which will be recorded. Afterwards, we will open the floor for a Q&A session in which the recording will be stopped. If you have a question or comment at that time, please raise your hand to share, and our moderator, who's me, will call on you in order. Please keep things respectful and orderly for everyone's benefit. Now, join me in welcoming Dallas.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Dallas. Thanks for having me today. So like Aaron said, kind of the point of today's presentation is going to be to hit on a couple of things. The biggest being just sort of describing what a union is in general and what specifically our union, the American Federation of Musicians, and then specifically our local, the Atlanta Federation of Musicians, what we are, what we offer, how we're set up. The sort of bulk of this presentation is about a lot of the member benefits offered by our union. And the idea I kind of had going into this was that after sort of presenting to everybody what our organization is, how it works, what it offers, we can have kind of an open discussion about, are these things that are actually attractive to you as a freelance musician? Maybe there are things that are attractive to you, but we could, alter them in some way that makes it even more beneficial or attractive. Maybe there's things you saw that you want that aren't even on this presentation at all, and we can kind of work towards introducing those things. But I really think we have an opportunity here to try and make this organization more known to musicians and also more useful to musicians. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully you enjoy the presentation. So give me one sec here to share my screen, and we'll get started. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that? Looks good. All right, sweet. So again, welcome to the Freelance Musician Virtual Town Hall, and I'm Dallas, and now let's get started. So the first thing I want to go over here is kind of in general, just what is a union? How are they structured typically? How do they work? And what do they offer to working people? So in short, a labor union or a trade union, as it's also commonly known, is an organized group of workers who basically collectivize to try to push towards goals or improvements in their working conditions, right? Something that we'll often hear when talking about organized labor is something called bargaining power. And the idea is that if you and other people in your workplace are kind of, all of one mind and focusing your energy in one direction, you have a really, really kind of more bargaining power, for lack of a better word, to negotiate things like benefits, workplace safety, wages, these kinds of things. And the idea is that you have a lot more power in these situations as a collectivized unit who's all on the same page than as individuals kind of just going at it alone, right? As far as like some nuts and bolts of how, unionism actually is just objectively beneficial to workers, I spent some time looking at the Department of Labor's studies on union versus non-union workers over the past decade or so. And there were two pieces of information that I came across that I think were really compelling. The first you can see here in this chart, I'm gonna try to move this guy to the side a little bit, is a study done on the median weekly earnings of union versus non-union workers, both in the private sector and the public sector. And across the board last year, it seems that union workers brought in about 9% more in weekly earnings than non-union workers. That difference is a little bit more stark in the public sector than the private sector. And most freelance musicians are in the private sector, but that number still holds up. It's a pretty, stark difference between the two. In addition to that, there's also been a lot of research going recently into union membership across the United States. And for quite a few decades, kind of from like the 80s on through the 2010s, there was a pretty stark decline in union membership across the United States. But since 2016, year after year, that number has been increasing. So clearly, it seems that workers are starting to come around to unionization again. And it seems to be working for a lot of people, both through, just the numbers on earnings of union versus non-union workers, and just the fact that more and more people are starting to get involved. And so hopefully, for those of you who are not members yet, this can be a good exploration into why these benefits can be so attractive. So as I mentioned before, why join a union? Wages are a big one. Also benefits. So benefits can often be negotiated through union contracts. Things like retirement plans in the workplace, health insurance, even tuition reimbursement, child care assistance, and contract enforcement is a big one. I know, at least with the musicians union specifically, having a place for standardized contract making and assistance in enforcing those contracts is a really big benefit that AFM offers to its members. In addition to this, solidarity in the workplace. If you think about kind of the history of labor in this country, a lot of the things that we enjoy usually across the board as workers in the United States, like the weekend, the 40-hour work week, workplace safety standards, all these sorts of things, weren't just given, they were, fought for by large groups of workers organized in mass, right? And even though that energy, is not necessarily as predominant as it was 100 years ago when a lot of these things were put through, I think we do have the opportunity to kind of reignite that spirit in the United States and try to continue working for its better working conditions for working people, right? So talking about kind of unions broadly, I kind of want to get now more specific into our organization. So the Atlanta Federation of Musicians is a local that is kind of a subsidiary of the broader American Federation of Musicians, which is actually, its full name is the American Federation of Musicians of the United States and Canada. So it is technically an international organization, covers the US and Canada, represents about 70,000 professional musicians in the US and Canada, and has been around since 1896. And the AFM is the largest organization in the world representing working musicians. And it offers a lot of things that I mentioned in the general union section about, helping to negotiate contracts, protecting the ownership rights of recorded music, helping secure benefits, healthcare, pension, and lobbying state and national level governments to help pass legislation that assists musicians. So the Atlanta specific local was organized in 1901. It represents around 700 musicians throughout Georgia, and I believe a couple of counties in Alabama, but mostly Georgia. And the major cities included in this are Atlanta, Athens, Augusta, Columbus, and Macon. All right, so before we get into the kind of the benefits that we offer at AFM, I wanted to give a brief overview of how our organization is structured. So I have a couple of slides here detailing sort of our top leadership positions, and then also following this, a quick discussion on kind of our election process, like how elections work in the union, how often they happen, how bill proposals kind of work, that sort of thing. But in brief, our president is Mr. Bruce Kinney, who is here today with us. Our vice president is James H. Patterson and Michael Moore. Our secretary treasurer, who is also present today, Mr. Bill Johnson. Our diversity delegate to the AFM International Convention is Mr. Milkshake Mayfield. And then we also have an executive committee, a local executive board that is made up of 7 elected members. And that's kind of the main leadership structure of our organization. There are definitely some other folks like Aaron here, who holds down our local office and is our office manager. It's a large team of people, but this is kind of a brief overview. So getting into the structure of how leadership is decided at the AFM, we have all members basically elect our leadership every 3 years on a 3-year cycle. So all members vote on all appointments, and all members are eligible to run for any position that's open. And basically the way it works is that during an election year, during one of our all member meetings, we will put it to a vote. So if you want to run, you can put your name in for the running. And then, whether you are running or not, you'll receive one vote for all these positions that are up. Now, even outside of being a member of the leadership team of the AFM, there are also ways and means for members to make proposals or amendments to current standing policies. Basically, the way that works is you can either submit a bill proposal or an amendment proposal before a full meeting, and it can be voted on at that meeting, or you can suggest your proposal at the meeting and it'll be voted on at the next meeting. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And with any of the things that we talk about in this presentation, if you have any further questions or want to dive deeper into any of these subjects, that'll be available to us at the end. Just kind of trying to keep things brief as we go through this first section. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about AFM benefits for members. And this is things that are basically available to anyone who is a member of the American Federation of Musicians. So starting off with one of our kind of most popular benefits are agreements regarding recording contracts. And I have a couple of sections here, kind of the main outline. So first off, we have our new use fees. So basically what a new use fee is when you've recorded something, let's say in the studio for a film, TV, video game score, whatever it is. And then that piece of media is used in settings outside of the original context. So like an example would be like you recorded something for film, and then that same recording is used later for like a TV spinoff of the same movie or vice versa, something kind of like that. AFM contracts can help guarantee in writing that you are still compensated for those new use situations. Related to this, we have secondary markets, which basically has to do with royalties through like the musicians who record for film. Basically, part of that contract will stipulate that a portion of your payment for that film will go into something called the Film Musician Secondary Market Fund, which is basically a large pool of money that all of these film royalties go into, and it's paid out yearly. So again, that's something that we can have written out in plain language in your contract. And kind of in general with these contracts, another great thing that we offer is assistance with litigation for breaches of contract. We have a number of reporting outlets. I mean, the contracts themselves are made to be pretty sturdy and stand up in court. I think we have a history of like our contracts standing up in court and winning and doing well. And this is just a good thing to have as a working musician in a recording context, because you have everything laid out, no gray areas. You have how much you're supposed to be getting paid, how much work you're supposed to be doing, and it's enforceable legally. Moving on from there, another benefit offered by AFM are insurance policies that are useful for working musicians. So there are basically discounts that we can get you on equipment insurance for your musical equipment and gear, deals on auto and home insurance, deals on general liability insurance. So this is basically protecting you from claims of property damage or injury. Something crazy happens at a gig, somebody gets hurt because some equipment fell or something like that. That's general liability. Business owners policies. So this is protecting you against personal and property damage at the workplace. Omissions and errors, which protects against lawsuits related to copyright infringement, libel, slander, service delivery issues. Kind of relating back to like a lot of what we talked about with like contract litigation. This is kind of like if somebody doesn't keep their end of the agreement on a contract, right? There's insurance that can help you on either side of that problem. And finally, cyber insurance. So this can help protect you from the costs incurred from data breaches and cyber attacks. Moving on, the AFM also offers a confidential reporting platform. So We have recently kind of had two big improvements on this front. Number one is adopting a new code of conduct that reaffirms our commitment to anti-discrimination and workplace harassment. And kind of as a addendum to that, we've also partnered with a company, Not Me Solutions, and there's an app, the hashtag Not Me app, which is available for AFM members. And basically what this gives us is a space for confidential anonymous reporting for anything like, workplace harassment, contract and policy violations, unresolved payroll discrepancies, right? Not getting paid for a gig or not getting paid the amount that was agreed upon beforehand. And just generally instances of feeling unsafe in the workplace. This is somewhere that you can report those things anonymously, and then there is a team kind of waiting to help you take next steps, depending on what next steps you feel are appropriate in that situation. More member benefits we have offered. I'm going to go through all of them here. Our first one is AFM Entertainment. So AFM Entertainment is a booking and referral service for AFM members. It takes in solo artists, bands, ensembles of all genres. For I have a brief write up of the requirements for how to make a page on AFM Entertainment. But basically, the way that it works is that a client will go to AFM Entertainment. Let's say, for example, someone's having a wedding. They will go to AFM Entertainment and make a request for a quote for musicians for that wedding. Let's say they want a 4-piece band for their event. AFM Entertainment will then go through the registered members, find 3 or 4 who meet the criteria that the client is looking for, send the client that list of musicians, and then they will choose from there, and then you as a musician will be hit up once you've got the gig, basically. And so it's sort of a booking service to kind of help get work for our union musicians. Moving from there, we also have Venuology, which is a venue review platform. Similar to the hashtag Not Me, it's an anonymous reporting platform. But specified towards reviewing different venues that you might find. I found that this can be really useful for touring musicians. Basically, you can go through any particular city or town that you're going to be planning on playing in. You can get more information on the venue you're going to be at, the sound quality, room size, how good they are, what the pay is, and how good they are at keeping their word on pay, what the vibe is, all these kinds of things. And the idea here is that it will help spur venues to be compliant with better business practices in the long term. And finally, here we have GoPro Hosting and GoPro Tunes. So GoPro Hosting and GoPro Tunes are I'll start with GoPro Hosting. GoPro Hosting is a web service hosting service that basically helps working musicians to get a website up and running. It offers discounted hosting fees, and it also provides you with support in getting your website set up. So you don't necessarily need to have a lot of technical expertise to get a really good website up and going. There's resources to help you through that process. And GoPro Tunes, which is a digital music store that offers AFM members basically 100% of their own sales revenue and allows you to set your own prices. So for those of you who are trying to sell your recorded music, this is an avenue to help do that in a way that you get a lot more control over than through things like streaming services or other marketplaces. All right, keeping it moving. We also offer a pretty robust pension program. AFM's pension is actually one of the largest pension funds in the world for the entertainment industry. Over $500 million in assets and millions of dollars are paid out to participating musicians every year. We can go over a bit in depth more later, kind of the nuts and bolts of the pension if anyone is interested. But basically, we have union contracts where you can kind of set aside certain amounts to be paid into the pension from your gigs, performances, whatever it is. And then once you meet certain criteria, you'll qualify to pull from that pension later on, after you retire. We also offer a live rehearsal space. So the James H. Patterson Hall, it's over near Piedmont Park. It's a really great space. It's where our main office is hosted, but we also have a really, really cool rehearsal space in there. It can accommodate a chamber orchestra. There's a grand piano, drum set, PA systems. And yeah, it's open and free of charge to AFM members. You just have to book it when it's available, and you can use that as a rehearsal space. We also offer assistance on international visas. So I know a lot of freelance musicians who travel internationally for gigs, be it going to Europe, going to Canada, Australia, Japan, wherever it is. The international travel process can be really hectic sometimes, especially when you're doing it for work and there's, money transfer involved. AFM has a pretty robust list of resources for assisting musicians in getting travel visas for work. And finally here, we also offer a comprehensive array of single engagement contracts. Basically what this is it's sort of a repository of just like template contracts, kind of just fill in the blank with your name, the employer's name, the amount paid for the gig, all that kind of stuff. But they are, already filled out, they've been reviewed. Like I said, they hold up in court really well. And it just kind of takes a lot of the mental space out of having to prepare for gigs like this that you want to have written down in a contract. It's just there and available to you. All right, we also have an emergency and disability relief fund. So this is through AFM at the national level. Basically the AFM Emergency Relief Fund is musicianly affected by major natural disasters like earthquakes, flooding, hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes, any sort of natural disaster. And the AFM's Lester Petrillo Fund, which was established to assist members who become ill or disabled and cannot accept work. So both of these are application-based. Basically, if you were a member and you were affected by any of those things, these are both things that you can apply for. And if you meet the criteria, AFM can assist you with getting through those tragedies. Okay, so we're kind of nearing the end of the benefits section here. There's a couple of things I wanted to touch on though before we moved on. In this earlier in regard to the pension, and that's something scale wages. So what scale wages are? Scale wages are a pretty big topic of discussion at one of our yearly meetings. And basically what we do is we vote on what the union says our sort of baseline price should be. And it's fully itemized out. So it's not necessarily just like this is what you should charge for a gig. It's what you should charge for a gig based on the time commitment, the things like doubling. So a lot of woodwind players will often be like, I play tenor saxophone, but I also double on the flute or on the clarinet, something like that. Cartage fees, commuting. I mean, there's quite a few different criteria that we all have listed out here, and it operates as a really good way of being able to calculate like what is a good rate to sort of sell yourself for, basically, right? And as I mentioned before too, if you consistently are taking on gigs where you agree to use a union contract and pay scale wages, that opens you up to things like pension eligibility and starting to think more long term about like retirement as a musician, which I know for a lot of us is not something that we think about, especially when we're younger, but I think it's important that we all start thinking more about these things in our work. So as I said before, we vote on this once a year. It changes year to year. Members can reference AFM scale wages as a quick benchmark for how much to charge for different services. And also in general, kind of as a more philosophical tool, I believe that trying to strive towards earning scale wages on gigs is a good way to pressure venues to raise, their standard of pay for musicians, right? We're offering services that are very specialized skills and take a lot of time and devotion to be able to do and do well and do consistently. And we need to, we need to try to assert that, both on ourselves and to try to just pressure that from venues to kind of be more of the standard than what often is the standard for working musicians. And yeah, as I mentioned before, contracts paying scale can be eligible for pension contribution if that's something that you choose to pursue. All right, a couple more things here. So another large organization that we work through is the Music Performance Trust Fund. So the Music Performance Trust Fund was established in 1948 as a national independent public service organization, nonprofit, not national, sorry, whose mission includes contributing to the public knowledge and appreciation of music, and is a vital organization that brings music to the public and supplements the income of musicians, all at no cost to those receiving this precious gift of music. So basically, it's kind of like a large grant organization, and it's funded via royalty streams from a couple of major signatory labels. Basically, this came out of a really large landmark court case in the 1940s involving the three big music publishers of the time: Sony Music, Universal Music, and Warner Music Group. And basically, the way it works now is NPTF gets the money for these large performances, grants, scholarships, all these things, because they get a small percentage of all streams from these large corporations. And so all that adds up to a pretty large wealth fund that they can use for a lot of good. I have a couple of statistics here over on the side. You can see 620 million in grants to the community since 1948, over 500 music in schools events since 2023, and since 2020, 462 music-related academic scholarships. So this is a really, really, really cool initiative that the AFM is involved with. And yeah, it does a lot of good for helping musicians and just letting people know more about music, right? But the appreciation of music for the general public. All right, so another new initiative that we have been having going on here is the Fair Trade Music. So Fair Trade Music is a grassroots campaign that is specifically sort of tied towards raising standards for freelance musicians through things like organizing, collective action, and education. It intersects musicians, venues, and fans to ensure things like fair wages, better working conditions, things of that nature. It also certifies that venues are meeting fair standards of pay, working conditions, and promoting respect for working musicians. So this group actually, to kind of give you an idea of sort of what sort of inroads they've made, specifically the union musicians out of Seattle who are involved with the Fair Trade Music, they actually recently had a really big breakthrough with the Seattle City Council working for standards for load-in procedures for musicians in Seattle. And they actually have achieved a citywide ordinance setting standards for musician load-in, which I know, as working musicians, I'm sure we all have 1,000 stories about a horrible load-in experience at a gig. And this is an example of real kind of action that musicians can take to try to set more standards for things like that. This side of things can often seem a little kind of smaller than the big, wide scale, big picture kind of stuff, but it's also a lot more, I think, relatable to actual working people in this career. Things like having load-in situations that suck, having venues that are notorious for not paying on time or paying the amount they promise, having studios that are notorious for having bad conditions in their recording studios. Fair Trade Music is kind of very specifically centered on trying to work at the grassroots level on making things like this better in cities around the country. And I think Atlanta definitely has its fair share of bad venues or bad employers that, if we were a little more organized on things like this, we could really try to affect some change on. But it just takes numbers and persistence, right? It's got to be a lot of us who are all really focused on this stuff to achieve change. So yeah, and this organization is open to all working musicians, whether they're union or non-union. It offers adaptable agreements and guidance from a great group of participants, and it encourages collaboration via participation in monthly international calls. So it's kind of a monthly based international meeting, and then there are subcommittees at more the local level who kind of do more of the actionable things. All right, so thank you guys. If you want to learn more, you can visit our local in person. We have a website, atlantamusicians.com, where you can sign up and join. That's atlantamusicians.com. And again, I've been Dallas McCorkendale, and thank you guys. I really appreciate you all being here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to transition into some discussion, questions, and suggestions. Like I said before, this can be kind of anything, right? And kind of some further in-depth discussion about anything that I talked about, questions about anything that didn't quite make sense to you or that you want to know more about, and most importantly, suggestions, right? If anything you saw, something that you think we could improve upon to make more attractive, if there's anything that you didn't see at all that you really wish you had seen, whatever it is, but we really want to get everyone's feedback on this stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Great work, Dallas.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome work. As Dallas mentioned, let's feel free to raise your hand either virtually. I'm going to stop the recording now,